Rabbi Dov Greenberg is the executive director of the Rohr Chabad House, a vibrant Jewish student center serving Stanford University in Palo Alto, California. At this heart of American technology and innovation, Rabbi Greenberg has built a thriving hub for rigorous Jewish study and a welcoming environment for young Jews to explore and experience their heritage. He has earned the admiration of the faculty and students at Stanford, who are inspired by his wisdom and warm approach, and by his ability to effectively communicate Jewish thought and spirituality in a way that touches the soul. Rabbi Greenberg lectures extensively around the globe, where he has developed a reputation for the refreshing Jewish perspective he brings to contemporary issues. Serving on the board of directors of Chabad on Campus International Foundation, Rabbi Greenberg is admired by his peers, fellow Shluchim on campus, and community Chabad houses far and near. Tonight, Rabbi Greenberg will address the theme of this year's Keynote on behalf of his fellow Shluchim around the world. Please welcome our fellow Shliach, Rabbi Dov Greenberg.
Rabbi Kotlarsky, I don't know why you would say something like you just did. You're usually right. So, I think you just said it's going to be the shortest keynote ever, right? Did I? 100%. You know, Rabbi Kotlarsky was once introducing a professor at a Jewish event years ago. He was the master of ceremonies. And I think the event seemed to be running a bit late. So Rabbi Kotlarsky tells this professor of English literature, he says, you have 7 minutes to talk, that's it. So the professor says, Rabbi, how could I share with the audience everything I know in English literature in 7 minutes? So Rabbi Kotlarsky says, sir, I advise you to speak very slowly. Rabbi Kotlarsky, dear Shluchim, distinguished guests, Senator Lieberman, friends. At a momentous Purim Farbrengen gathering in 1960, the Rebbe spoke of Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, authored by King Solomon Shlomo HaMelech. He explained that night that the Song of Songs is a relevant and powerful portrayal of Jewish history, of Jewish story in modern times. And that is what I want to share with you tonight. But first, what is the story of the Song of Songs? It's early spring in the land of Israel. The rains of winter have passed. The sun is out. The birds are chirping. There's a scent in the air. The flowers bloom. A beautiful maiden goes out into the fields. She encounters a handsome shepherd. They discover a true friendship and a deep love. And they commit to eternal fidelity. They make up the next day, they'll meet again in the same place. The maiden rushes home. And on her way, Matsu'uni Hashemrim Hasevivim Be'ir, the watchmen of the city see her in a euphoric state. And they say, what happened to you? And she says, I encountered this beautiful shepherd. And she describes in detail his radiant face and his eyes and his charm. And they mock her. They say, this love, it's not going to last. She goes home, she goes to sleep. At the crack of dawn, she wakes up. She rushes back to the field. The sun rises, all the shepherds begin to gather. Her shepherd doesn't show up. She waits. No show. She searches for him. On that hot day, through the valleys and mountains, through the vineyards and gardens of Israel, hours and hours she's running, she's searching for her beloved shepherd. She can't find him. The sun sets. She goes back to her home, heartbroken, crying as she falls asleep. In the silence of the night, footsteps are heard. And then suddenly, she hears a knock on the door. And she says, "Who's there?" And the voice responds, "Kol doidi doifik." "It is me, your beloved shepherd. I have searched for you, and I found you. Pischuli, achoisi, rayasi, yoinasi talmasi. Open the door up for me, my beloved, my friend, my perfect one." At that moment, a strange indifference overcomes her. A few hours ago, there was a fire of longing and love. Her heart becomes cold. And she tells him, "Go away, go away. I want nothing to do with you." He knocks again. And he says, "I have a deep feeling for you. Open the door, let's talk about it." And the maiden says, "Pashaditi es kutanti echocha al beshena." I've taken off my clothing and I changed into night clothes. Why should I dress again? Go away, leave me alone. And he knocks again. And she says, "Rachatzti es raglai echocha tamfim." I've bathed my feet. Why should I dirty them again? Go away. Go away. And the shepherd keeps knocking, and the clock moves on, and he's persistent and patient. And suddenly, Sholach yodoi min hacher. The shepherd takes his arm, puts it through a hole in the door to open up the latch, to unlock the door. Umei hamu olav. And her heart is inspired, and she jumps up to open the door. And our sages say that this is a metaphor of the relationship of God and the Jewish people. Almighty God is the shepherd, the Jewish people the maiden. Relationships are turbulent. There was a young man who had a problem. Jewish guy, he had a Jewish mother. The problem was, that wasn't the problem. The problem was that whenever he would find somebody who he thought, "I'm going to marry her," he would invite her home. The mother would watch her, and the moment she left, the mother would criticize her, a whole list of flaws. And this went on for years. Anyone who he wanted to marry, she would disqualify. So he went to his professor of psychology. He says, "How do I deal with my mother? Give me a wise approach." He says, "It's actually very simple. Find somebody similar to your mother, and you'll see your mother's going to have a different kind of reaction." And he found somebody like his mother, same mannerism, same behavior patterns, a carbon copy, a clone. Brings her home. And the next week, the professor sees him and says, "How did it go with your mother?" And he said, "It was great. My mother loved him. My father couldn't stand her." Relationships are complicated. And it's true that the relationship between God and the Jewish people is a shir hashirim. It's a love song. But it's a turbulent relationship. It's not smooth sailing in terms of Jewish history. And so throughout millennia of scholarship, different sages have analyzed the text in a different way. But here's the Rebbe, Purim, 1960. God is the loving shepherd. Israel the maiden. We met at Sinai. We fell in love. A romantic beginning. Beautiful. And then, said the Rebbe, comes the long road of exile and persecution and disaffiliation and difficulty. And the heart of the Jewish people becomes numb and indifferent. Apathy eats at the Jewish soul. Most of the Jews, or a great many of the Jews, who left the shtetls of Eastern Europe, left their Jewishness in the shtetl. They said, Pashaditi eskutanti, we take off our Jewish garments. We take off our clothing of the mitzvot. Enough of that Jewish way. We're coming to new shores. We're going to assimilate. My great-grandfather, Louis, fled Russia in the early 1900s. A wonderful man. And he had lived through persecution and difficulty. And on the ship, on the way to America, he took his tefillin and he threw them overboard. And he watched them sink, disappear into the ocean. Gone was the glow of his mother's Shabbos candles. God was the Jewishness of the shtetl. For 3,000 years, his ancestor walked on the Jewish road. But he said, Rechatzti es raglai. Enough of walking down the Jewish path. Enough of that. I'm going to come to America. I'll assimilate into the cosmopolitan society like everybody else. And I'll be an American. And so like the maiden in the Song of Songs, so many Jews said to our tradition, go away, go away. We're done with it. Said the Rebbe that night. As the Jewish community was fracturing between those that were committed, who built institutions that served their own needs, and a great many of our brothers and sisters who were assimilating, he said, the Jewish people are not two camps that are divided. We always remain one people. And if it appears that the Jew says, go away, I don't want to be part of this faith, this community, this people, this Torah, that is only on the superficial level. But deep inside the heart always burns a love and a fire for God and their Jewishness. All you need to do is reach out with love and caring into the heart of your fellow Jew and unlatch that dividing barrier. And you'll see an inspired soul. And so yes, God is the eternal shepherd of the Jewish people, but he needs ambassadors on earth. And so the Rebbe sent out shepherds of love, Shluchim, to court the maidens of Israel. And he told them, wherever you go on earth, you're going to find partners, not lay leaders, partners, fellow shepherds who love the Jewish people, who are motivated to its continuity. Together you'll partner with them, shepherds in love with our people. You'll reach out and the Jewish heart will open its door, and together you'll change the world. And that, from the outset, happened with great difficulty, both financially and spiritually. And here's an example of it. When Rabbi Zalman and Miriam Lipsker went out to open the Chabad house at Emory University, their first Passover, their first Pesach came. They figured they're going to have about 30 students. They sent out invitations. 250 students responded. They were just starting. They calculated what that would cost, renting tents, caterers. Came to $20,000. They barely had a budget for 20 students. They consulted with their small group of supporters, that was the beginning. And their supporters said, you got to cap the Seder. 30, 35 students, max. And they thought about it. And they realized, as Shluchim, their task was to open the doors of Jewishness to every Jew. And so they went ahead with a large Seder, and 300 students showed up. And during the Seder, one student gets up and says, "Rabbi, I have a question." So Rabbi says, "Ask." He says, "Who's paying for this Seder? It's a great expense. Who are your sponsors?" So the rabbi says, "We have two sponsors, American Express and Visa." So the student looks at the rabbi and says, "I have a whole new level of respect for you, Rabbi." So the rabbi says, "Why?" So the student says, "I never knew you had such prestigious corporate sponsors." But it was with that selflessness and courage and dedication that Shluchim have touched Jewish people one Seder at a time, one campus at a time, one Jew at a time, and the Jewish world begins to shift. And let me illustrate what I mean when I say that with one Seder and one student, the Jewish world shifts. 1970, a secular student named Stanley, studying at the University of Maryland, encounters a shepherd and esteemed shliach, Rabbi Shalom Gordon, of blessed memory. Rabbi Gordon says, "You want to wrap tefillin?" Stanley says, "No, I never wrapped tefillin. I never will. Go away." Rabbi Gordon knocks again. "Wrap tefillin, it's a special mitzvah. Connects your heart and mind to God." Stanley says, "Go away." Gordon keeps knocking. Stanley realized the best way to get rid of this nudnik is to wrap tefillin. So he wrapped tefillin just to get rid of the rabbi. And one mitzvah led to the next. And they started studying Torah. And Stanley shared the Torah with his friend Sherry. And they got married. And they built a Jewish home. And they had Jewish children. And Stanley and Sherry are my parents. And Lou is my great-grandfather. Last Shabbat, Rabbi Gordon's effect some decades ago is not limited to our family. 4 of Stanley and Sherry's children are the Rebbe's ambassadors, run Chabad houses on college campuses around the world. My sister and brother-in-law at Emory, brother and sister-in-law at Lehigh, brother and sister-in-law in Berlin, my wife Rachel and myself at Stanford. Last Shabbat, you combined the Jewish students that came to those 4 Chabad houses Friday night. 392 students came to celebrate Shabbat, study Torah, and meet fellow Jews. From one Jew to hundreds of Jews, from hundreds of Jews to thousands of Jews. And what is exceptional about this story I just told is that it is not exceptional. It is the story of Chabad in our time. Last year, 86,000 Jewish students visited the 200 Chabad centers around the world. And the Jewish world owes a special debt of gratitude to 2 shepherds, George and Pamela Rohr, who have shepherded Chabad on campus with love and magnanimous generosity. And Chabad on campus is a microcosm of Chabad's endeavors on a global scale. Encounters like Stanley's and Sherry's are happening all the time. From continent to continent, country to country, city to city, shepherds are knocking, doors are opening, hearts are inspired and the Jewish world is changing. And I was talking to this secular Israeli student at Stanford, an atheist. And an Israeli atheist makes an American atheist look like a chief rabbi. It's the real thing. And he tells me, he's riding through California, wherever he goes, he sees a Starbucks and a Chabad. Rabbi Kunyan, Asher Koyach. Where's Rabbi Kunyan? And he was asking about what was the Rebbe's vision? What? So many Chabad houses around the world, what? And so I told him, Israel has a law that no other country on earth has. The law is that not only the citizens of Eretz Yisrael belong in the country, but any Jew anywhere in the world who shows up to Eretz Yisrael, to their homeland, is granted automatic citizenship. No question asked. You're Jewish, it's your homeland, you're a citizen. Because what Israel wanted to do is give every Jew in the diaspora, because of persecution or whatever, immediate home. And what Israel did with geography, with land, that is what the Rebbe did with the Jewish soul. The Rebbe looked at the Jewish world and said, there are so many Jews who don't have a home. People who abandon their Jewishness. Create a space, a house, a center, where any Jew, no matter how far they drifted from their Jewishness, the moment they show up, you're a citizen. Celebrate together. Come, let's celebrate together. Let us enjoy our Jewishness together. Let's grow together. And if you look around the world with tremendous success, that endeavor, think of the term Chabad house. You walk into the House of Lords in England. The House of Lords, what do you find there? You find, I suppose, a house filled with lords. You walk into the House of Representatives here in America, what do you find? If the government's open, you find maybe some representatives. Firehouse, firemen. Walk into a Chabad house. The one thing you don't find is a house filled with Chabadniks. You find every kind of Jew, a secular Jew, an atheist Jew, a disaffiliated. And that's the definition of a Chabad house, where every Jew feels at home. And looking back over the Rebbe's leadership, 20 years since he passed away physically, you see that shift, the transformation in the Jewish world. There is no community, there is no Jewish community today that has not been impacted and changed because of the Rebbe's vision. And many places on earth that never had a Jewish community today have. But that doesn't mean there are no challenges ahead. And it doesn't mean everything's perfect. We remember in the Song of Songs, the maiden encounters Shoimrei Ha'ir that challenge her. Matzu'uni ha'shoimrim ha'sevivim ba'ir. There are those shoimrim who count sevivim ba'ir. They count the populations in the Jewish cities. Research, the Pew poll, studies, many. The most recent is Pew. Shoimrei Ha'ir, they tally it up and they say the Jewish commitment is fading. We won't last. It's going to disappear. With no malice, it's research. So what is our response to that? So first, in early 1960s, there was a famous magazine, had millions of readers. It was called Look magazine. And they published in the early 60s a famous cover story. The cover was entitled The Vanishing American Jew. And the article was all about the fact that by the 21st century, there would be no Jews left in America. By the time 1980s rolled around, Look magazine had gone bankrupt. They had closed their doors, and I hear that Chabad of Midtown Manhattan is looking to buy their building. To be a Jew, we can't despair. And we have to be optimistic. I mean, Hanukkah is coming. Think of it. On Hanukkah, we eat latkes and donuts. It's nice. Purim, we eat Hamantashen, a cookie named after Haman, a jelly cookie. On Pesach, we eat matzah, and we crunch away on these Jewish delicacies. And often we don't stop to marvel that these three empires, Egypt, Greece, the Syrian Greeks, and Persia, they all set their sights on destroying the Jewish people. These were the most powerful empires in the ancient world, and they said, we're going to destroy the Jewish people. What did we do? What was our response? We turned them into matzah balls and jelly donuts and cookies. That's how Jews bring light into darkness. And so, turn negativity into a mitzvah. And so when you look at Jewish history, it's not naive to be optimistic about the future. It's realistic to be optimistic if you're a Jew. And so a Jew moves forward with optimism. But optimism is not a response, it's a feeling, and it's an important feeling. I mean, in California, if you feel good about yourself and you're optimistic, that is a response. But in most of the normal planet, it's not, but what is our response? What's the strategy? 2,500 years ago, the prophet Ezekiel Yecheskel had a great vision. And in the vision, God brought him to this valley, and he showed Ezekiel a valley of bones of Jews that had died. And God said to him, Hatichyena hatzamot ha'ela, could these bones live again? And Ezekiel said, I don't know. And then before his eyes, the bones slowly came back to life, and they lived. And God tells Yecheskel, this is a metaphor of the Jewish people, of Beis Yisrael, the house of Israel. And people might say they won't make it, but they'll recover and they'll revive. This is the image of it. That's the story. And the prophets, and Yecheskel, Lamed Zayin. But the Talmud in Tractate Sanhedrin, Tzadik Beis, is not satisfied with the story. The Talmud wants to know, what is the next chapter of the story? What happened to the dead people that came back to life? So first the Talmud says, it was a temporary revival and recovery. Meisim shehechya Yecheskel, the dead that Yecheskel brought back to life. Amdu ar agleim, they stood up. Sharu shira umeisu, they sang a melody and they died. A short revival. But then the Talmud concludes, no, that is not what happened. In fact, what happened is, Alu l'Eretz Yisrael, they moved to Israel. Nasu nashim, they got married. Helidu banim ubanes, they had children, they built Jewish homes. And so it was a real, genuine revival. And then the Talmudic Academy got quiet. And the great Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira stood up, Raglov, and he said, not only was it a genuine revival, Ani mibnei bneihem, I am a grandchild of one of those people that Ezekiel brought back to life. And he pulled out a pair of tefillin, the Talmud says. And he said, V'halolu tefillin shehiniach li alba mehem. And this pair of tefillin is from my dad, who got it from his dad, who got it from his dad. Great-great-grandfather, he was one of those people who Ezekiel brought back to life, and these are his tefillin. And the Talmud is not merely talking about a chapter in Ezekiel. The Talmud is addressing Jewish continuity itself, the fate of our people. When Jewish people recover after a cataclysmic event, or when we experience a great revival, the question is, will the revival be temporary, or will it be permanent? What is the answer to that? And so in our times, from the valley of the Holocaust of the 1940s, the Jewish people lifted themselves up from the valley of despair and rebuilt Jewish life in America, in Eretz Yisrael, and around the world. But the question is, what is the future of that? And the answer is, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira's answer, that if we take the traditions and the joys and the depth of Jewishness, of our grandfather's tefillin, of our grandmother's Shabbat candles, and we pass it to our grandchildren and to the future Jewish children, then Judaism thrives and grows. every Stanley needs to be granted loose tefillin. And ironically, that is what all this research shows, including the most recent. What does the research show? The statistics? It shows that Judaism is not endangered by a great act of betrayal. It's endangered by small acts of neglect and apathy. That's what endangers the Jewish people. Therefore, all you need to do is turn it around. Judaism is strengthened and thrives when we focus on small acts called mitzvot. Judaism will not experience growth even when you have a miracle at the level of Ezekiel. But when we take great attention to small, minute mitzvot in our daily lives, then you have permanent revival. And for decades, the Rebbe has been hammering that message into the Jewish world. Tefillin, Shabbat candles, a page of Torah, a page of Talmud, kosher. One mitzvah, go out there to every Jew, knock on those doors. Grant them their grandparents' traditions. And then you have a vibrant future. Just like no mitzvah is too small, and every mitzvah is important, so too, no Jew is ever lost to our people. No Jew could ever be written off as gone. And that Purim, the Rebbe said that sometimes you can have a Jew who says, Rachatzti es raglai, pashadati es katanti, I abandoned my faith and our traditions. I want nothing to do with Judaism. And you could say that Jew seems to be lost from our people. Forget it, don't spend time with that person or that individual. But there comes a moment in everyone's life where sholach yodei min hachir, God stops knocking, but reaches into the soul, and that relationship between the soul and God is revived. And so you never write off another Jew because that infinite capacity of the soul always remains. Rabbi Ephraim Silverman, shliach in Cobb, Georgia, gets a call one night. A man, Ken, is on the phone. He says, Rabbi, you have to come to my house. My wife has a few hours left to live. She asked me to call you. Rabbi Silverman goes to the home. The woman was terminally ill. She looks at Rabbi Silverman. She says, Rabbi, I only have a few days or hours left. I married out of our faith. My husband's not Jewish. He's a good man, but I married out of our faith. I have a son. His name is Ken. He's 10 years old. I'm not going to be here by his bar mitzvah. Promise me to bar mitzvah my child. I'm not going to be here. Study with him. Give him some education. And Rabbi Silverman promised her. And the next morning he found out that Lisa had passed away. Months passed. Rabbi Silverman remembered his promise. He calls Ken. He says, Ken, I want to start learning with your son. And Ken says, Rabbi, I appreciate your calling, but I need to be honest with you. I'm not Jewish. I remarried, Christian woman. Matt's growing up in a completely non-Jewish home. Judaism is not important to him. He's not asking for a bar mitzvah. And a bar mitzvah is going to be confusing. And therefore, the bar mitzvah is offered. But I appreciate your call, but no bar mitzvah. Rabbi Silverman didn't know what to say until the conversation ended. That night, he couldn't sleep. And the next morning, he picks up the phone. He says, Ken, yes. Ken says, what can I do for you? He says, Ken, I have a question. He says, when Matt gets a bit older, comes back from college or high school, he's going to want to know about his mom's last night on earth. And he's going to ask about what happened. And he's going to find out that she spoke to me that night. And then he's going to find out what she said. And your Matt's going to come to my house. He's going to knock on the door. Ken, he says, I hear the knocking. He's going to knock on my door. And he's going to say, Rabbi Silverman, you promised my mom you would bar mitzvah me, you would study Torah with me. What happened? How did you not fulfill the promise? Rabbi Silverman says, Ken, just tell me, what should I tell your son when he comes knocking? And there's a silence on the phone. And Ken says, Rabbi, I didn't think of it that way. You're right. Let's plan for a full bar mitzvah. And Rabbi Silverman studied with him. And Rabbi Silverman and his Rebbetzin Chani made a beautiful bar mitzvah. Matt gets up on the Shabbat of his bar mitzvah, and he says, if this was important to my mother in her last hours, then it's important to me, and I'm coming home to my Jewishness. And you got to think about it. Here was a woman, Rechatztius Raglai, she abandoned everything. She married out. She didn't think about her Jewish identity. But what was on her heart in the last hours of her life? What did she really care about? What was the neshama telling her? She was concerned about her son and bar mitzvah and Jewishness. Because there's a moment where even if nothing else is knocking at your door, God reaches into the heart and inspires it. And that tells us not about only the last moments of life, it tells us about the nature of a Jewish person. That we never write off a Jew, because no matter how far they've drifted, they're one with our people, and all we need to do is reach in with love, and we have a thriving Jewish community. And friends, I remember coming home from school when I was maybe about 5 years old with my first homework. It was on the verse of Genesis, the first verse of Genesis. And in the school that I studied in Cheder Lubavitch in Morristown, we studied in two languages, Hebrew and Yiddish. So it went like this, Bereshis, an unifying, Borel, Elohim, od Gott bashafen. We didn't speak either of those languages in my home. So I was a bit lost. And I remember coming home with that first Hebrew and Yiddish homework, and I give it to my mother, and I say, Mom, you gotta help me. And I'm sitting next to her waiting with my expectations. She's not reading, she's not writing. And she begins to cry. And she says, I can't help you with this homework. I wasn't granted an opportunity to study Torah when I was a child. I can't read these languages. So I was a bit shaken. My mother was crying. So I said, you don't have to cry. I can call my classmates, Binyamin or Avi or Yossi. They'll help me with the Hebrew homework. I used to speak those languages in their home. And my mother said, Davi, I'm not crying because I'm sad. I'm crying tears of joy because I sense in my heart that one day when your children come home, you will be able to study this homework with them. And so these are tears of joy. And she was right. And friends, Kol, Doidi, Doifek, all of Jewish history knocks at our heart. And it says we have the capacity to grant Torah and our heritage to so many Jewish children and Jewish people around the world. If you don't do it, who will? And if not now, when? Pischuli achisi rayasi, says God, open up your heart. If we inspire ourselves to do yet more, then we will be able to open up the hearts of the Jewish people. There's so many Jewish organizations and groups that are doing wonderful work, there's no question. But there is not a Jew who knows something about Judaism today. There is not a Jewish denomination today. There is not a Jewish group that will not say that a large part of the destiny of our people is on the shoulders of the shepherds in this room here tonight. And so, if any part of this evening touched our heart, the question we need to be asking ourselves is, what tangible, concrete thing could we do to affect one more Jew in our community, one more family in our community? 5 families, 10 families, a concrete action, something that we can take with us that will actually change the lives of another Jew. And so, shepherds of Israel, let us turn to each other tonight and take that one more step to reach one more Jew. Let's decide here, now, not tomorrow, to do something to touch one more Jew. And as the Rebbe would remind us, redemption is around the corner. The world will soon be filled with godly light. Let us open the hearts of our brothers and sisters. Let us kindle the flame. Let us ignite that joy and happiness and celebration in the Jewish world. And may redemption come speedily in our days. Amen.